Hello everyone, before I start the actual review, I want to say a few things. This is a little bit of a different video than I normally do in that it is about an entire series, and the only reason I'm doing it this way instead of doing each book individually is because this series really goes together really well, like it's one book. It starts off right where the other one lets off, and it just flows good together, almost like it is an entire book instead of three books. And another thing that I want to say is Elin Hilderbrand really does her research, because in this book there is a guy who lives in Houston, the nice part of Houston, and I lived there for most of my life. And she actually mentions a restaurant that is a real restaurant that my friend who still lives in Houston goes to a lot. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they mentioned Snooze. My friend goes there. And it was really kind of cool to hear about that. And then they talked about the medical center, which I was rushed to, or I was in the medical center and stayed there for a while when I was a baby because I was born premature. So I was like, oh my gosh, the medical center. So that was really cool. My mom, we were talking about this, and my mom thinks that she went to MD Anderson in Houston for her cancer treatment, and that's where she got the idea to use Houston as one of the locations for a book. She did have breast cancer, so my mom's like, maybe she went to the MD Anderson for breast cancer treatment, and she's using that as part of her story. I'm like, oh yeah, maybe that's right. So it's really cool to hear about Snooze and the medical center, and I got really happy. I got really happy. So on with the video. Hello everyone, today I'm going to be reviewing the book series Paradise by Elin Hilderbrand, and this series contains 3 books. It contains Winter in Paradise, What Happens in Paradise, and Troubles in Paradise. And the series starts off with a woman named Irene Steele who is hanging out with her friend who, on New Year's, because her husband is away, quote unquote, doing business. You learn the truth later in the book, but he's supposedly on a business trip. So she's hanging out with her friend during New Year's, but then after she gets home, she gets a call that her husband, and what we later to find out is his mistress, died in a freak helicopter crash in St. John in the U.S. Virgin Islands. And so she goes with her 2 sons, Cash and Baker, to figure the whole thing out. And Cash and Baker have their own struggles going on. Cash lost his company that his dad helped him build with a loan. And then Baker is living in Houston, Texas with his wife and son, and he finds out that his wife is actually a lesbian and she just up and leaves. So he wants to start a new life as well, and Cash wants to start a new life. And so the whole series starts with them, or it's about them, starting a new life in the Virgin Islands and meeting people in the Virgin Islands and really making a life from this horrible tragedy that has happened. But when they're over in the Virgin Islands, they find out that her husband has $1 million home, probably more than that, that she didn't even know about. And along with the $1 million home, he also has a a mistress and a 12-year-old daughter. So he has been doing shady stuff for about 12 years, and she really wants to, she's dealing with that, but then she also wants to make a life in the Virgin Islands because she really doesn't have anything in Iowa where they live. And I really like this book. I can understand why people like Elin Hilderbrand because it is just a fun read with a lot of twists and turns along the way, but it's just I think this would be a really good summer book while you're on vacation. And I can see why people like her. This wouldn't have been a book that I would have picked out because I'm just not into. I wasn't into her until I started listening to her on Audible. These both of these three books. Sorry, both of these three books were ones that my mom downloaded from Audible. So, but yes, I got into these books. I read them back to back to back. I think I started around near Thanksgiving and finished New Year's Eve. I stayed up late New Year's Eve. I almost made it to midnight finishing the book. So within a 2 month within a month period, if you I mean almost a month period, I I read these books. So it was back to back to back to back. And I can see now why people like her. I wasn't you know, it wasn't normally something I'd read, but I can really see it now. And I want to get more of her books. I think she is I need to finish the Nantucket series, and then she's going to write a book with her 17-year-old daughter about a boarding school. So when I when she writes that, I will, you know, get that on Audible and read that for you guys. Um, yeah, so I really like this series. It's a really good escape book, and I don't want to give too much away, more than I already have. So I will see you all in the next video. Bye, guys.